This is 757 Saturday Sports Talk with Matt Hatfield on ESPN Radio 94.1.
By the way, some are probably wondering why in the world I talk about Bill Stachelski just straight from the JMU VMI. I thought of Bill Stachelski stepping down at Cox because two of his former standouts, Kade Johnson, the quarterback for JMU, and A.J. Smith, the defensive back for VMI, go head-to-head, so I'm not sure who he's rooting for today. Anyhow, it's now time for Hour 2 of 757 Saturday Sports Talk, powered by Larry King Law here on ESPN Radio 94.1. I am Matt Hatfield, and we are now pleased to be joined by a special guest. He writes about education, youth, and sports for the News Leader out in Stanton, News Leader Now on Twitter. You can check him out there. It's part of the USA Today Network, and you can follow him on Twitter at Patrick_Height. We say hello to Patrick Height here on the program. Hey, Patrick, I was saying this earlier with us being here in Virginia Beach, well, really 5-10 minutes from Norfolk. It's almost on the border. People always confuse Norfolk and Norfolk. I'm sure it's similar out there with Stanton and Staunton, isn't it?
Yeah, if you're from here, you know it's Stanton, but anybody outside the area, Staunton is the way they normally pronounce it. But trust me, people in Stanton are quick to correct you if you say Staunton.
Yeah, they're not. I remember a few years back, I forgot what school I was butchering. It might have been Lord Bottish or somebody, and I've done it with a couple of the single A schools. They come at you almost with pitchforks. I mean, it's like, oh boy, I better get that right. So you're not kidding on that.
Stantonians are very defensive of the way that the city is pronounced.
Stantonians, all right.
Yeah, Stantonians. That's the. I don't know. I live out in the county, so I'm not officially a Stantonian. But I believe that is what we call people that live in Stanton. But yes, it's Stanton, Gotcha. Not Staunton. Just remember that if you're ever in the Shenandoah Valley.
Good deal. And Stantonians, not to be confused with San Antonians. They're out in Texas.
No.
All right, let's dive into more pressing matters. And before we get to the matchups, real quickly, this wild and wacky VHSL sports season that we had you back on the airways in the summertime during our old 757 at 6 weeknight program. I know we were sitting there kind of on pins and needles. We even have this type of season. The winter was funky. More teams, it felt like, didn't play, although there was more teams that didn't. But in a lot of areas, it was very little action and very few people able to go. We're starting to get closer to out of this whole deal as people are getting vaccinated. But kind of give me your take of how you've adjusted and adapted to covering things this year, probably doing more virtual than in person, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I've actually done a lot of virtual coverage this year, which has been interesting. Even last night, the Riverheads volleyball team played in a state championship game, and I covered it virtually. And I don't know the last time we had a team in a state championship in a major sport. If you're talking volleyball, basketball, football, that I did not attend in person. Or that one of our writers did not attend in person. But it just made a lot of sense for various reasons to watch that game virtually and cover it. Coaches are cooperative. They understand. Most of the coaches will give you a call after the game, give you some comments. You might be able to talk to a player even. So, yeah, it's been kind of strange adapting to that this year. I did a lot of that in the first season with basketball. Watched a lot of games online. Covered those because obviously that was when restrictions were really tight, and before I was vaccinated, before most people were vaccinated, so that made a lot of sense to cover those games virtually. We're starting to get out of that now. It's good. I was glad to be able to get out to football games and on Friday nights and be there in person and see those games this year. Now I will say we have two teams. I'm a lone sports writer. If you anybody that knows anything about journalism, we've cut over the years. We're down to just me covering sports at the News Leader. We've got two teams in the state semifinals. So today I'm going to watch those games virtually. I'm going to watch them and do my best to keep up with both of them. It would have been nice if they maybe had coordinated and not both kicked off at the same time. But
yes,
I'll make do.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of complaints about that on our message forums over at Virginia Preps. And, of course, you guys do an outstanding job with all the coverage of the various sports, not just football and basketball, the main ones, but everything when it comes to the fall, winter, and spring sports seasons with the VHSL. And, look, I had Larry Obama on from the pilot a couple weeks back here, Patrick, and I committed him. I'll do the same with you. One of the, I guess, more gratifying things, because I've watched upwards of 100 games, believe it or not, on NFHS Network and through streaming devices in the last year. One of the more gratifying things is when someone reaches out to you and they think you're at the game and you're actually watching it from a computer screen. It's like, well, good. It wasn't that bad, the report or my coverage, that they knew I wasn't there. So that's a really, I guess, thing that makes you breathe easier when you know you did a heck of a job. You fooled the listener, although you're not trying to fool the reader or the listener, No,
that last night at the volleyball game, I had a couple of people thank me on Twitter for the updates. Now they didn't say you were there or you were watching virtually. They just thanked me for the updates that I was giving out on Twitter. So yeah, you're right. And for the most part, I love this streaming service. I hope
me too
it continues. I hope these schools have these cameras now. I hope next year, when we think that things might be back to normal or more normal, that we're still able to watch some of these games streamed, because that has been one of the advantages that this year has offered, is that a chance to watch a lot more games and a lot more teams online.
Yeah, and listen, I had a post several weeks back. I think some might have misinterpreted. Look, I think the Pixelot and the NFHS and even some that are on YouTube and Facebook Live, though the quality may not be quite as crystal clear, some of them, I think it's fantastic. I think for the indoor events, especially when you're talking about things like basketball and wrestling and volleyball, it's really great. You get a good view. When it's, some outdoor events like football, you might need multiple camera angles. There's some tweaks that need to be made, but I think about 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, we couldn't have done it. So it's definitely made our jobs better, and it makes the person that can't come to the game, even if they wanted to, that live in different cities and counties and states, certainly appreciative that they can actually be there and it's sort of a way watching it on a screen.
Yeah, completely agree. And, it's great. I've heard about, so many, uncles and aunts and cousins and people from out of state that want to follow these teams. They've got a chance to do that now. And like I said, I hope that the schools will at least continue that in some fashion going forward.
All right, let's get to the games today. You got two teams in your area playing, two teams that are in our listening area here in Tidewater, with Riverheads taking on West Point in Class 1. But let's begin with the Class 2, Stewart's Draft and Poquoson. Stewart's Draft trying to get back to the Class 2 final after falling to Appomattox in 2019. And, of course, Appomattox is looking mighty, mighty strong, and they've got themselves a matchup today against Union out in Big Stone Gap. But first meeting between these two, the Islanders and the Cougars, and it figures to be I guess a mirror images matchup with the way they both run the ball and play defense.
Yeah, I think they're going to see a lot of similarities between these teams. Fans in the Valley will remember Poquoson from a couple of years ago when they came to Stanton to play Stanton High School, then Robert E. Lee High School, in the state semifinals. And that game went to 2 overtimes, I think, before Stanton won it and got to the state championship. So this Poquoson team is going to be a good test for Stewart's Draft. If Stewart's Draft wins, it's going to be based on their defense. I mean, they were a great defense last year. They're even better this year, I think. They're giving up 5 points a game. They are dominant on that side of the ball. Latrell Fomby on the defensive line, he's the regional defensive player of the year. If you hesitate, if you stop at all in the backfield, he will be on you. I can't tell you how many opposing coaches this year he's the first player they mention. When you ask about that Stewart's Draft defense, when you talk to a coach about the game against Draft, he's the first player they mention because he has been so dominant this year. But he's not the only player. I mean, I looked, they had 6 defensive players in the all-region team. Yeah. So they are loaded on defense. Poquoson will have to figure out a way to score against them, and not many teams have. Not even the powerful Riverheads offense. They beat Stewart's Draft, but it was 10-7 in overtime. So not a lot of teams have been able to score against this Draft defense.
Yeah, I'm getting the sense, and this was similar to what happened for Poquoson in its regional semifinal, that they won by a close margin. It didn't take more than 16 points to beat Nottoway, and certainly Stewart's Draft was down 3-0 in the regional championship against Strasburg, but came back to win 23. I feel like the first team that if you get to 20 or 21, that can win the game. And kind of getting some info, as I'm sure you did this week, from both the coaches and speaking with them, Elliot Duty at Poquoson and Nathan Floyd at Stuart Straff. It was kind of funny to me, and going back to that point of they're like us, we're like them. They didn't hide it. There's no secret about what they do. Not a lot of trickeration, if you will, or trickery. But did you get kind of a vibe of more confidence or apprehension from either guy? Because one team's played here 8 games, the other team's played 6 games. Although Poquoson is playing its best ball right time of the year, kind of give me your sense on the confidence meter for the two coaches.
From what I gathered, I mean, both of them feel confident and feel like if they can do what they do, that they can come out on top. If Stuart's draft has a weak point, and hey, they're 7-1, they're in the state semifinal for the second straight year, so they're not a weak team. But if they have a weakness, really, it's on offense. I've talked to Coach Floyd. They'd like to throw the ball a little more. I think if this was a traditional season where you had the 10 regular season games, you had a couple of games maybe in the preseason that you could get ready, and then 10 regular season games, that you would see this team maybe more two-dimensional, maybe throwing the ball a little more than they have. But they've been very reliant on the run. Aaron Nice has carried that team really. Although Kobe Rothgeb, Blake Roach are very capable at running the ball, it's really Aaron Nice is the kid. He's got 690 yards this year and 9 touchdowns for draft. They run him a lot, sometimes out of the Wildcat too. He'll just take the direct snap and take off. I'd like to see them. And again, maybe if we had a longer season, they would have worked on this a little more. But I think they can beat Poquoson the way they play now. I think if they hope to win a state championship, they're gonna have to maybe spread it out a little more, maybe try to throw the ball a little more to Joel Howard, who is a weapon out there. He has 18 catches this year, so it's not like they totally ignored him. But if he can catch the ball and get a little space, he has got speed. He can really hurt a defense. I'd like to see them maybe against Poquoson today try that a little more because, like I said, if they can get past Poquoson, they're going to have to throw the ball more next week to either beat Appomattox or Union. I think most people expect them to be playing Appomattox next week, but I think they're going to have to throw the ball a little more to even stay with Appomattox. They can't just rely on the running game. They can't just rely on Aaron Nice, running it down your throat. But so I'm curious to see what they do against Poquoson today, and if they try a little more mixing it up. So.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I think you can chime in if you disagree. I think we'd give the edge defensively to Stuart's draft. It's probably a wash to some extent, depending on the day and how it goes in terms of the offense and the running game. If there is a slight edge or any kind of edge for Poquoson, it might be the kicking game with Ethan Snedden. Kind of give me, could that be something, if this game is close, that could have helped the Islanders as they try to spring what some would call maybe a mild upset if they were win today, the kicking game and special teams, if you will?
Sure, I think that could be, but I will tell you, Stuart's draft has got a quality kicking game as well. Okay. They've got a freshman, Bryce Dennison, who has been handling their punting duties and kicking. I've seen him make some really nice plays for a freshman back as punter. They've had a couple of times this year I've seen the ball snapped over his head, and he's done a nice job of getting back, getting the ball, either getting rid of it somehow, some way. And then as far as kicking field goals, he can nail it. I think he had a 35-yarder this year. The kid can kick for a freshman. Now, he's a freshman. If he's put under pressure today, if he has to make a field goal late, can he handle that? We'll see. There's some complaints from the Stuart's draft fans when draft played Riverheads. They went into overtime, tied at 7. Draft got the ball first. They had 4th down. They could have sent him out to kick. Instead, they elected to go for it. They failed to do that. Riverheads comes down, ends up getting a field goal and winning the game. So, you wonder how much confidence the coaches actually have in him in a pressure situation. But from what I've seen of that freshman, he's been really good. And I think the draft kicking game is better than some people might think.
Interesting. A few more minutes here with Patrick Height of the News Leader out there in Stanton. It's 757 Saturday Sports Talk here on ESPN Radio 94.1. Give Patrick a follow on Twitter at Patrick_Height. Check out all his work and his coverage there at newsleader.com with all the updates and stories when it comes to Riverhead's West Point and Stewart's Draft Pocosin. And speaking of Riverhead's West Point, Robert Casto's Gladiators trying to cement themselves all by themselves as the only program to win 5 consecutive state championships. They share that distinction of 4 in a row with Highland Springs earlier this decade, or say the century, as well as Phoebus and Hampton from the 1990s with those Ronald Curry-led Crabber teams. And you look at this streak that they're on right now, Patrick. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. It sounds like, and it looks like, this Riverheads team might be the best of all their teams that have won the state championships. I mean, they come in with, like a 34-game winning streak and a 19-game playoff winning streak. And, oh, by the way, the guy running the football shattered rushing records in Zach Smiley.
Yeah, it sounds strange to say this might be the best team, but I think you're right. It might be. I mean, Zach Smiley has just been a dominant force. He's got over 1,000 yards this year. He's got 19 touchdowns, 17 of them on the ground, and he's not the only weapon they have. They've got I think 5 backs that have over 100 yards rushing this year. This team is absolutely dominant. And, say what you want about Class 1, especially about Region B, because Riverheads has not really been challenged in Region B. You can go back for years. So this is the 4th. They've won 4 state championships in a row. They've been to 5 straight state championship games. And really, I was looking back through the regions. Maybe they've been pushed twice in regional games. Essex in 2017 gave them a game. Back in 2015, I think George Wythe gave them a bit of a game. Really, in the playoffs at all, they just do not get pushed until the championship. Galax beat them once in the state championship game, gave them a heck of a game last year. A lot of people are expecting that to be the state championship game again this year. So we'll see, but yeah, you're right. Riverheads, this might be, of the many great teams they have had since Robert Casto's been there, especially since that first state championship in 2000. This might be the best team. And the scary thing was, after the regional championship, Robert Casto said, we're just still getting better. We've only played 8 games. We're still finding our way. And I think we're getting better. To opponents, that's got to be scary to hear.
It really does, and it's you marvel at the fact, I think, that school once was 0-6 in the playoffs in their history before they've rattled off now 44 playoff victories, and it's soon going to be, it looks like, maybe 8 state championships. They could be getting to 10, 11, 12. They keep this going on for a few years, and Casto was going to give it up. He decided to come back, and after a brief little hiatus there, didn't even miss any games or seasons. But, you hate to look past the opponent here in West Point, who's been a nice story here for Coach Jack Lawson and his team, but I think they're the biggest underdog on the board. It's probably debatable between them and William Fleming, who plays Stonebridge in Class 5 of these 11 state semifinal games. But if a team is going to beat Riverheads, Patrick, my hunch is they're going to have to do it by passing the football. I'm not sure West Point can do that, but maybe Galax can with that Cole Pickett kid.
Yeah, I think that's what you look at. The only way that you can beat Riverheads is to have a good passing game. Caswell, to start the season off, and again, that was first game of the season. Riverheads was still just really trying to find itself, but Caswell had a good quarterback, threw the ball, and that game was competitive up through the third quarter. And then Riverheads pulled away a little bit, but really that's it. Draft didn't throw the ball much against them. Draft beat them, or didn't beat them. Obviously, lost in overtime, 10-7, but played them tight with defense. They didn't throw the ball a whole lot. They ran what they normally do on offense and just let their defense take over. But you're right. I think if anybody's going to beat them, you're going to have at least some passing game. And I'm not sure West Point can do that. I talked to Coach Lawson earlier this week, and that is a good story. He said he went into this season thinking it was a rebuilding year, and didn't really have any expectations of them playing for a berth in a state championship game. It certainly helps that some teams, because of COVID, decided not to play this year. That certainly helped them, and he admitted that. He said, this was a year it kind of opened up for them, and they took advantage of that. So I think it's a great story. I'm happy that they are to this point, but boy, I think it comes to an end today. If if they pull off that upset, it's one of the bigger upsets in high school football history, probably.
Oh, without a doubt. And, I think if Essex was playing, who ordinarily is a team that would run into Riverheads around this time of the state playoffs, and they didn't have a chance to play fall sports, that we might be talking about them today. But it's neat for that West Point community, which really supports its programs. And they got a couple key guys coming back who run the football well for them with Elijah Adkins and Khalil Norris. So we could see them potentially again in the fall, or I should say late fall, early winter of this 2020 calendar year, which has not been nearly as difficult for us as the 2020 year. Well, you can follow everything when it comes to high school sports up there in Stanton, when it comes to Riverhead, Stewart's Draft, their matchups with Poquoson, as well as West Point today, newsleader.com, and check them out on Twitter, Patrick_Height. Always a pleasure, my friend. You be well, enjoy the weekend, and I'm sure we'll talk with you sometime in May or later, all right?
Hey, Matt, thanks for having me on.
This is 757 Saturday Sports Talk with Matt Hatfield on ESPN Radio 94.1.
Back here on 757 Saturday Sports Talk, powered by Larry King Law. If you're injured in an accident, you know who to call. It's 757-INJURED for Larry King, with the maestro on the other side of the glass, Kyle Hightower. You ever been called a maestro before?
Only rarely.
Well, today, that's probably the only rare time, or by me. I am Matt Hatfield. He is Kyle Hightower, and we'll be talking with the coach, Ed Young, in a bit. But a few weeks back here on ESPN Radio 94.1, actually it was 2 weeks back, got a chance to catch up with the guy who is the founder of the DraftScout.com. I think he's doing some promotions where you have a chance to do like a mock draft and you can win some money and some prizes, which is pretty cool. I'm a cheapskate, so I probably won't do that. But hey, if you're one that's into that, go ahead and do it. And he's ESPN NFL draft analyst. You see him on the TV a lot with Mel Kiper, Todd McShay, and some of the morning folks and NFL Live programming and so forth and so on. And does Two Guys and a Girl podcast. I'm not listening to that. It's like a takeoff from that TV show, right? Two Guys and a Girl. I don't know, something like that. Anyways, we caught up with Matt Miller a couple weeks back to discuss the stock of some local standouts and just the draft in general. And three of those local players, you're talking about Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah from Notre Dame, the ACC Defensive Player of the Year, who cut his teeth at Bethel High School in Hampton, was a two-sport standout in football and basketball. He's going to get picked in the NFL draft, likely in the first round coming up on Thursday. You got Patrick Jones of Grassfield High in Chesapeake, who started at Pittsburgh and was also an All-ACC honoree there. And Daz Newsome from Hampton High with UNC, the Tar Heels. He's probably going to go in the mid-rounds. But first up, Miller's thoughts on Owusu-Koramoah and what his projection is for him.
Now, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, I had the opportunity to interview him maybe a month ago at Exos, the training facility in Frisco, Texas. One of the nicest human beings you'll ever meet off the field. On the field, he's this alpha leader. He is, like you said, a rover. He can play outside linebacker, strong safety. He can rush off the edge. When we talked to him, he said that I'm working on Mike linebacker after watching the Super Bowl and seeing what Levante David and players like Devin White had to do. So he can play everywhere for your defense. And I think what makes that fun is that each team might see him differently. Some teams are going to see him as let's put him in the box. Other teams are going to look at him and say, let's have him cover these freakish athlete tight ends that we're seeing in the NFL now. So the beauty with Owusu-Koramoah is that he can do everything. And I think his draft range is probably 15 to 22 is where you would expect him to come off the board. A great career at Notre Dame after a little bit of a slow start there. But again, just a tremendous person and a great player too.
Now, that was back on April 8th when we talked with Matt Miller, NFL draft scout for ESPN, about Owusu-Koramoah. A lot of the early mocks were projecting him to go to Ed's Raiders of Las Vegas at 17 overall. Now you're starting to see more of them have him slip. I don't know why, because this guy to me is a home run. I mean, I think he's going to be every bit as good as Tremaine Edmonds has been for the Bills defense out of Dan River High School and Virginia Tech. He's going to be just a leading tackler and a Pro Bowl level player. The Saints at 28 is where I think he's been projected some spots to slip down to, or the Browns at 26. If he lands in that range, a playoff level team is going to get themselves an absolute steal of the draft. A guy that could be the NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. And I'm not just saying it because he's from the 757. He's that good. Special teams impact there too, in addition to starting like as a rover from day one. What about Patrick Jones? He was kind of viewed for a little bit, maybe months ago, as a first-round guy. There's been some question marks raised about him. Here's what Matt Miller says: is it's not looking like round one, probably round two or round three for him.
I see him as a round two, probably pick 50 and beyond. this is a good, deep group of pass rushers. There's not that elite player. There's not a Chase Young or a Nick Bosa this year, but there's a lot of depth, and that could push someone like Patrick Jones down. I think the other thing hurting him, pulled a hammy at his pro day, so his 40-yard dash times, test attempts weren't that good. And this year, unfortunately, we didn't have an NFL scouting combine. So your pro day workout is the only impression out there outside of your tape. If Patrick was able to go to the Senior Bowl, that helps him a little bit. But I've heard from a lot of teams, not just with Patrick Jones, with some other players, who say, yeah, but the pro day. Good film, but the pro day was rough. That's hard to get over when it's your only exposure to them in person this year. That's the other side of this. Teams were not able to be out on the road during the college football season. So when your only exposure is maybe not your best impression, that can hurt you. But Patrick Jones has speed to power conversion. He's long, he's big, he's very, very physical. And I think that helps him in a year that has a lot of smaller pass rushers. I think that's something that's going to really help Patrick Jones' draft stock, is that he's one of the few true 4-3 defensive ends in this year's class. Some
valid points there from the DraftScout.com founder, Matt Miller, also of ESPN. It's 757 Saturday Sports Talk here on ESPN Radio 94.1, as he gave you some thoughts of Patrick Jones from Grassfield High out of Pitt, going to the NFL Draft this week, as well as Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah prior to that there from Bethel High in Hampton with Notre Dame, the ACC Defensive Player of the Year, a couple of All-ACC guys. Another All-ACC guy was the one and only Dazzlin' Daz, as our buddy Mike Smith, the Hampton Crabbers head coach, called him. Did a lot of great things for Mack Brown and the Tar Heels as they moved up the ladder in the conference standings and became a relevant factor again, somewhat in the national scale too. And Newsome, there's been some questions. Does he catch the ball consistently? Those type of things. But man, oh man, I posed it to Matt. I said, to me, he's a day one special teams guy, and he could end up being a slot receiver and a late round steal. Is he the late round steal on his radar? Well, he talks about him and another guy that's caught his eye.
Daz Newsome's a good one. He's been overlooked, I think, because of Javonte Williams, Michael Carter, because of Dimey Brown. So, yeah, overlooked a little bit. Obviously, Sam Howell down there in North Carolina. But I think in that same mold of what you're saying, I'll throw a deeper sleeper out for you from South Dakota State, Kade Johnson, who's 5'10", 185 pounds, exceptional kick returner. He's a slot receiver with very, very strong hands. He's incredibly quick. So I'm with you. You look at those wide receivers who outside of the first and maybe definitely outside the first round, but maybe even out of the second round who could be big-time contributors. We see it every year. There's always that mid-round guy who we sit around on Sundays and say, how the heck did this guy fall to round 3, round 4, or even a little bit later? I think Daz Newsome's a great answer for that, but I'll go with my guy Kade Johnson as the answer there.
Johnson. There's a guy for Matt Miller. And, I think the overwhelming storyline for the draft is going to be, besides the quarterbacks, where they all fall beyond Trevor Lawrence, we, is going to go one, and Wilson too. What happens with Fields? What happens with Lance? What happens with some of these guys? That's going to be certainly a storyline. Well, trades. How many are there going to be? Will there be a lot of movement? Will it be before draft day, or should we say draft night? Will it be during the draft? Well, Matt was able to weigh in on his thoughts about the trade element.
I think it will be quiet for now, and then I think we'll see it pick back up. Reason being is that trades are expensive right now. The 49ers gave 2 future ones and a future third-round pick to move from 12 to 3. It's very expensive. That same trade on Thursday night, April 29th, will not cost that much. So we've heard that Atlanta wants to move out of the number 4 spot potentially. A team like New England or Dallas trying to move up, they could go ahead and set the table. They can make the call, but it will be, dependent on their guy being on the board. So whether it's Atlanta, Detroit, Carolina, a team trying to move back, I think we'll see more deals actually happen during the actual draft as opposed to more of these before the draft type moves like San Francisco made, Miami made, 2 of them. We've seen, the Rams trade picks for Matthew Stafford. I would be surprised if we see anything else like that until April 29th gets here.
So there you have it from Matt Miller, NFL Draft Scout with ESPN, as he breaks down all the possibilities for the NFL Draft coming up, which begins on Thursday night. You can watch it on TV, ESPN, ABC, and of course, we've got you covered right here on ESPN Radio 94.1 with wall-to-wall draft coverage beginning Thursday at 7 o'clock. Friday night at 6 o'clock will be rounds 2 and rounds 3. And then when we're done next Saturday at noon, rounds 4 through 7 right here on ESPN Radio 94.1. Appreciate him taking some time from his busy schedule with Kuiper and McShay and all those guys to chat with us a few weeks back. And we now bring in a guy who is a draft prognosticator, a picker, not a nose picker, just a game picker. He is the head basketball coach at Nansemond River, and he often sits across from me in these studios, well, pre-pandemic and hopefully post-pandemic. He is the coach, Ed Young. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, and keep that seat empty because sooner than you think I will be back.
Oh, okay, that's nice to hear. And you are a game picker, not a nose picker. Did I get that right?
Absolutely, for sure. I don't even want to go into that second part. I haven't really looked hard at the draft. I've been listening to some stuff. The NFL draft is like a holiday for everybody. I mean, it's like people go berserk over the draft, and it's a crapshoot. I mean, Trevor Lawrence is number one, and 5 quarterbacks will probably be gone in the first round, and then 4 years from now, somebody will come and say, let's redo the 2000. The guys in the first round won't even be picked in the first round again. So it's a crapshoot. You still try to get the best what you need, best player at that position what you need, make a few trades. Of course, I always like seeing the trades. It adds excitement. But NFL draft, like I said, it's a national holiday.
I'm with you. We should get the day off and everything. And by the way, you had me very concerned for about a brief 3.5 to 4 seconds as Kyle looked at me, I looked at him, because you went mute for a second. I thought you were about to wreck a car. So be careful out there on the roadways, whatever you're doing. Before we go to break, and we can talk about this a little bit more. Go ahead.
I'm okay. I let the dog's in the car. He was doing the steering wheel when I was talking. So.
Don't do that. Get the dog in the back seat. Is that Bear, by the way? The dog named Bear? You got a dog named Bear. Why don't you have a bear named Dog?
My boy, Little Bear.
Okay.
No, he's a better tracker than I am. He can put his paws on the whip. Hey, I taught him how to text. I'm sure he can drive.
Oh, cops are waiting for you. That license plate again is? No, I'm playing. Oh, boy. Hey, well, before we go to break, we'll talk more about we'll tackle the games going on today in the state playoff semifinals for the VHSL in the next segment. But 2 quick thoughts I want to get from you. Actually, 2 of your coaching faves have decided to not retire, but retire from their sport for now in different duties. One is from the 757, one is from the 804. Football side, Bill Stachelski, I mentioned, going from the football chair to the golf chair. And 2, a guy who's known to be a good golfer, Vance Harmon, leaving Henrico High to be the athletic director at Douglas Freeman, which, hint, hint, might be a future site for the Virginia Preps Classic. You never know. I want your take on that. And then to follow that up, what is Ed Young looking forward to the most in the next 7 days? Is it these state playoff football games, semifinals, championships, the Kentucky Derby next Saturday, the draft on Thursday night, or something else?
When now or when we come back from break?
No, how about you answer one now and you can answer the other one when we come back from break? You get to pick and choose. Just don't pick your nose. Or the dog's nose.
In the next 7 days, obviously, the draft is big. The NFL draft is big. It's going to take a lot of headlines. Key injuries in the NBA. Anthony Davis just came back. Durant hurt again. And not an injury, but LeBron James getting on social media and talking about social injustices. And I like the idea that he's trying to take a lead voice. A lot of the former stars back in the day, your Michael Jordan, that got hammered for not saying out. But, know the situation first before you open your mouth. I mean, opinions are okay. Everybody has one. But be careful what you spew out because a lot of people believe whatever LeBron says.
And that might go for Brett Favre, too, not just LeBron, by the way. I mean, they're decorated icons, but sometimes we don't need to. I mean, everybody's allowed to have their own opinion, but we don't need to hear from you all the time, Yeah,
I mean, it's the bottom line, the Derek Chauvin thing, there was no need for what he did, period. I'm tired of that stuff. There's no need for it. But it's such a major problem that just people blurring out stuff is not going to fix it. We already talked in the past about how that has to be taken care of, and it's still not fixed. But anyways, in terms of the sport world, that's what I'm looking for in the next 7 days. Kentucky Derby, boy, you beat me in the last couple of races, so I gotta find me a horse.
Well, we couldn't figure out earlier if it was you or Kyle that won something. Well, he had a couple of years ago. He had a horse that had the whole episode of the Derby, but he won, and then they said no, he didn't win. But okay, so there you go. That's so you would rank it number 1. What you going Derby 1 for you, draft 1 for you?
Nope,
no draft.
Draft 1.
All right.
Draft 1, Derby 2.
He's going to get his Owusu Koromoa Raiders jersey. I know that's what he wants. He'll be in heaven if that happens, although the draft guys are saying he might slip beyond that spot. All right, we'll come back and get Ed's thoughts on Stack and Vance as well as today's games right here on ESPN Radio 94.1.
This is 757 Saturday Sports Talk with Matt Hatfield and Coach Ed Young on ESPN Radio 94.1.
Larry King Law brings you 757 Saturday Sports Talk each and every weekend, 10 a.m. to noon here on Saturdays on ESPN Radio 94.1. I am Matt Hatfield, joined again now by the coach Ed Young here as we before we turn our attention to the state semifinal games with 5 teams from the Tidewater area in action today, and we'll go through the picks that Ed and I have made up on VirginiaPreps.com. I take a lot of pride in what our staff has done, Ed. We're the only site out there, and a lot of great sites and news organizations covering these state playoffs during very tricky times, but our whole staff, from Danny Lewis to Reese Becker to Marcel T. Mason to Robert Edmonds, Devin Payne, Rodney Young. I'm sure I'm leaving somebody out. Rodney Young's your cousin there. Not really, but only site with all 12 state semifinals with full previews, so very happy about that. But real quickly here, just in a couple of moments, or a couple of minutes, can you give us your take on Bill Stachelski going to coach golf at Cox, no longer going to coach football, and Vance Harmon leaving the basketball coaching side of things to be the AD at Douglas Freeman? Nearly 400 wins for Vance there and a couple of state titles.
Well, we talked about this last week when you threw the names at me of guys that the Beach has had a plethora of football coaches resign, retire, whatever word you want to use. And again, my statement to that is, first of all, they all have a right to make decisions in their life, whether they want to continue coaching or not. All coaches will have that decision at some point. It's nice when you can make your own and somebody doesn't tell you what you have to do or should do. These guys made their own choice. Now, again, I take it personal because these are two super people. As the old saying goes, they're better people than they are coaches, and they're extremely, extremely good coaches. So that goes to tell you about the character of the people. Yeah, I'm mad because these guys have a lot more years to give, a lot more kids to affect, and we need good people in this profession. The bums we can get rid of. There's some bums in the coaching field. We can get rid of them dudes because we don't really need them.
All right, give me the names. Let's get rid of the bums. Go ahead. Let me hear them.
I can do that, and it would make for great radio. But, we're running out of time.
We are. Nice job of spinning it away, but go ahead.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I had a couple on the tip of my tongue. Boy, did I had to bite my tongue.
I know who they are, but go ahead.
But in all seriousness, Vance Harmon's just tremendous. A guy that I watch, a guy that I try to learn from. Love talking to him. You mentioned about his golf. I always kid him about, why do you wear your golf shoes on the floor? Vance is very good. People get on me about my suits. Vance's shoes are legendary that he wears on the court. Just great for the kids, great for the gang, great X&O guy. But he's going to, and I want to say to him, Vance, what are you doing? You're going to AD position? Do you know how much of a headache that is? And as a coach, you worry about your sport, your kids, your people. AD, you got to worry about a lot of sports, a lot of kids, a lot of coaches, a lot of administration, a lot of people. I hope he knows what he's in for, but I'm glad for him. He's going back to his alma mater. He's young enough to still have a whole lot of energy to put into that because it's going to need a lot. But I'm happy for him. Dak, I'm shocked. The guy is a machine on the sideline. He's just tremendous. I like kidding with him, always debating with him, hey, 4th and inches, throw the doggone ball, flea flickers, throw to the lineman. I love playing around with his mind. And another guy that, I like to see what he can do in other sports, and we're going to find out in golf. But, it's like a semi-retirement position. A lot of times when coaches take the golf job, it's towards retirement. They go out there, throw a few swings on their own, make sure the kids know what they're doing and they're not chopping grass like I would if I'm on a golf course. My famous thing in playing golf was on my second tee shot ever. I hit a tree and an owl came out, and I said, how do you like that? I got a birdie on my first time playing. And then unexplicably, I turned the cart over going around the third hole in one of the country clubs I golfed at. So they didn't like seeing me play golf a lot. So you won't see me retire and play and coach golf. But both these guys, I wish them the best. I hate that the profession's losing them. Hopefully the guys coming behind them will be able in time, and it's going to take time because these guys were at it a long time. They'll be just as good as them.
We have to get a golf match with Cox at Douglas Freeman or Douglas Freeman at Cox. Watch those two guys.
That'd be good.
Yeah. All right. The picks for today. All right. I don't think we disagreed on anything, which makes me upset because, I like to put a bottle of water or something on it.
I need to disagree because aren't you ahead of me by 1 or 2?
Yeah, I don't think we disagreed on anything because, so let's rattle on for people who don't know. I've got Oscar Smith 26-16 over Massaponax today. Ed has 24-14. We both have South County winning 21-10 for me, 28-18 for you. Both have Highland Springs beating Maury. You've got it 26-24. I've got it 27-14. Stonebridge
Maury
easy. Go ahead.
Maury can win that.
Maury can win that. I agree. I was saying earlier in the show that the quarterback play for Highland Springs has not been crisp. They've got an injury to one of their receivers. then that defensive line for Highland Springs is the real deal. I'm not sure their middle linebacker plays as strong and consistent as it was a couple years ago when they routed Maury. But they got some guys on that back end, one going to Boston College, one going to Oklahoma, and Maury might be a year away from winning it. I think Stonebridge can beat either one of them, which they've lost their last 7 state championship games, which is unfathomable. But we both got them rolling. We both got Lake Taylor. You got it 22-18. I got it 29-12 over King George. Oh, by the way, the King George D coordinator has plastered all over social media that we have picked against him, the entire staff and the entire site. So there you go. Motivation, bulletin board material for the Foxes. If they win the game, we'll never hear the end of it. We both have Tuscarora beating Salem. You got it 30-14, wider than I did, of 35-24. We both got Lafayette today, 28-20 for me over Independence. You 30-12. And this could be, Ed, if this is your type of game. You love those 49-48 games. Independence is putting up like 41 a game and giving up 37 a game. That could be an old-fashioned down by the corral shootout.
Well, I agree, too. Now, let me ask you this. Is there any rain in the forecast for some of these games being played?
There is, and I could have brought that up more to Chris Scott than I did, who I had on the show earlier in the 10 o'clock hour, the head coach of Oscar Smith, and in hindsight, I probably should have. It's changing every couple hours, though, because a couple days ago it didn't look as bad. Then it was like a day, I think it was Friday morning or Thursday night, it looked like we're going to get thunderstorms. Last night I look at it, I'm like, we're going to get downpoured, and it just changes every couple of hours. I'm kind of keeping my fingers crossed we can get it in, and it won't be as much rain till later on in the game. But if we get thunderstorms and a delay, that'll really throw a monkey wrench into things.
And my point for asking that, too, is I think when you have muddy fields and rain while the game is going on, the scoring gets cut down. Coaches get a little bit more conservative, protect the ball. So I think that takes away from any high-scoring games.
It could, and I don't know that it'll be a total shootout. But if there's a game that gets in the 40s and you're looking for like a sleeper with two teams that run the ball predominantly, don't rule out Lafayette Independence. That's a good game today. We both got Lord Botetourt cruising past Liberty Christian, although LCA has the number 1 rated junior offensive lineman in the country in Zach Rice. Problem is, Lord Botetourt's got 3 or 4 dudes, 6'5", 260, one of which is getting recruited by all the big boys in Gunnar Givens, who's a top 100 player, 200 player in the country. And then the other game, Stewart's Draft and Poquoson. We both have Stewart's Draft. You got it 23-21 over Poquoson. I got it 21-6, and last night Galax was a winner. You had it 36-8 over Holston. I had it by a count of 30-18, and the final score was 27-6. I do think we might disagree on a game next week because, be it Highland Springs or Maury against Stonebridge, and sorry, William Fleming, I don't see you winning. That could go the other way. And I'm going to tell you right now, Riverhead should get its 5th in a row, but Galax, we just had on Patrick Height of the News Leader out in Stanton, Virginia. Galax can throw it, and if somebody's going to beat them, they're going to have to do it throwing it. So don't rule out Galax, who was the last team to beat Riverheads in the playoffs back in 2015 when they won 7-6 in a defensive grudge match.
Yeah, I'm not going to deal with next week until we get there, but it's going to take a lot to convince me to go against Riverhead in that situation. I wanted to pick Poquoson just for the sake of being different. But
you are different.
Yeah, I want to be different. But if I do it and I lose it, then I'm really screwed because next week we only have how many games?
It'll be 6 state championships. We go from 12 games. Yeah. Well, here's the thing, though. So I nursed the 1-game lead over you, but here's the thing, Ed. So we agree on all 11 games today and the one last night, and you're going to stick with it. I'm going to stick with it. But if there's one game that you feel the least confident in of your projected winners, Oscar Smith, South County, Highland Springs, Stonebridge, Lake Taylor, Tuscarora, Lafayette, Lord Botetourt, Stewart's Draft, Appomattox, Riverheads, which are you least confident in?
I would do that Stewart's Draft Poquoson.
Well, you better say Stonebridge. I'm probably second most confident in that, with most confident in Riverheads.
Yeah, most confident would be. I would say Lord Botetourt for me.
All right, now that last question, and we'll be getting off because we're actually going to have to get off the air here on 757 Saturday Sports Talk. If there's a game that's decided on a last-second play, a touchdown, crazy play at the end, I would say buzzer beater, but this is football, not basketball, and I know how that brings back bad memories. Maybe even overtime. If there's an overtime game, which game do you think has the makings to be that? Looking at your score, it feels like you're going to go with either a Highland Springs and Maury, Lake Taylor, or King George, and Hanksler has had his share of heart-stopping finishes, or Stuart Straff Pocosin, because you have all of them winning by 4 points or 2 points.
Yeah, but for some reason, you got me excited when you were talking about Lafayette in a high-scoring game.
Okay.
And who was Lafayette playing again?
They are playing Independence, the second-year high school from Ashburn, And
yeah.
I'm going to Oscar Smith Massaponics, and I'm telling you, more people this week think it's just going to be a steamroll, and I got news for you. Massaponics is legit. I'm thinking that game has the makings, if they both bring their A game, to be an all-timer. So you never know. If Smith jumps on them early, it could be a blowout. But that one's a sleeper to me, too, on that ledger.
I don't think I picked Oscar Smith as a blowout in that game.
No, 24-14.
Yeah, I think if Oscar Smith is off their game somewhat, Massaponics is on theirs, then Massaponics can beat them.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple other teams in there. I don't care how good they play. I don't see them winning today. But that game right there, I could see Massaponics beating Smith if Smith is a little bit off their game. But I would take that. Lafayette Independence, I think, could be your overtime, your crazy game.
All right, good deal. Well, we both have Oscar Smith, Lake Taylor, and Lafayette advancing to get the opportunity to host state championships next week, while we both have Maury and Pocosin falling. But we still got love for you Commodores and Islanders out there. And
yeah, I hope they win. I do.
Yeah.
I picked against them because of reverse psychology. Now they'll win.
There you go. Well, that'll do it, Edward. Thank you for coming on the program, and enjoy your weekend. And we'll probably see you in May, because next weekend will be the first day of May.
That's right. May Day is here, and I made it safely home with the dog, and even used the turn signal, so I taught Bearwell how to drive.
There you go. That's the coach, Ed Young. Enjoy your weekend, my friend. We'll see you either Cinco de Mayo or May 1st or sometime next month. For our guests today, Patrick Height of the News Leader, as well as Chris Scott, the Oscar Smith head football coach, and Kyle Hightower, other side of the glass. I am Matt Hatfield, and we'll do it again next Saturday in May on 757 Saturday Sports Talk, powered by Larry King Law, right here on your home for sports. It's ESPN Radio 94.1.